Damon told everyone exactly who he was. He beat them to the punch so they wouldn't look too closely. 42 years old, senior project manager at a mid-sized architecture firm in Seattle. Twice divorced, but on speaking terms with both ex-wives. No kids, a small apartment overlooking the bay. He had a cafe he liked. He went to the same coffee shop every morning. He barely knew the barista's name, but he always left $1 in the jar. He did the food bank some Saturdays. He didn't honk at people. Mostly. There was a thing one time with a lost cat at Costco. 3 hours in the parking lot, the old guy crying when they found her under a minivan. Damon told the story at parties sometimes. People said, "That's so you." He liked that. What kind of person he was, he wouldn't have paused. A good one, he'd have said. And he would have meant it. That's the thing about people like Damon. They've spent so much time tending to the image of a kind, fair, decent human being that the image becomes more solid to them than the person standing inside it. It becomes a coat they put on every morning, and after a while, they forget there's anything underneath. Gareth started working there sometime in the spring. Gareth was 26, too thin for his frame. Gareth had bad posture. He favored his left side when he stood, shoulders rounded forward, eyes locked on the carpet. His resume was fine. Junior designer, 2 years at a smaller firm in Portland, references that came back lukewarm. The kind of hire you make when you're short-staffed and the budget won't stretch for someone better. Damon decided to take him under his wing. "He just needs a mentor," Damon told his team lead, with that careful, gentle smile he'd perfected over the years. "I'll handle him." For the first month, things were fine. Gareth was quiet, polite. He kept his head down. He stayed late most nights. He turned in his work, and the work was passable. Damon bought a round of drinks on a Friday. "New kid's doing all right," he told the creative director, taking full credit. The cracks started in April. A missed deadline on the Briarwood lobby project. Then another 2 weeks later. Gareth apologized both times. Gareth looked like a walking corpse. His skin was gray, and he kept losing his train of thought mid-sentence. His hands shook a little when he reached for his coffee. Damon noticed. But Damon didn't ask. He called it professional boundaries, which was just an easier way of saying he didn't want to do the harder thing, which is to walk over to someone's desk, pull up a chair, and say, "Hey, are you okay? Like, really okay?" In May, Gareth missed a client presentation, a big one. He'd called in sick at 6 a.m, his voice barely a whisper on the other end of the line. The team scrambled. Damon covered for him, smoothed it over, made the firm look professional in front of a client who was already nervous. And on the drive home that night, sitting in slow traffic on I-5, Damon made a decision. He was going to do the right thing. He was going to help Gareth. The next morning, Damon scheduled a meeting with HR. He chose his words carefully. He wasn't complaining, he explained. He was concerned. As Gareth's mentor, he felt it was his duty to flag what he was seeing. He listed Gareth's slip-ups, the unfinished Briarwood drafts, the blank stares in meetings, the sudden absences. He made sure to sound deeply sympathetic before he laid out exactly why Gareth was a liability. He just thought Gareth might benefit from additional structure, maybe a short performance improvement plan, something to help him get back on track. The HR director, a woman named Ellen, took notes the entire time. She nodded at the appropriate moments. When Damon finished, she thanked him for his honesty and his courage in raising this. On the elevator down, he caught himself humming. Gareth was placed on a 30-day performance improvement plan 2 days later. Damon was the one who told him. He sat across from Gareth in a glass-walled conference room with a tired peace lily on the table between them, and he used the gentlest voice he had. "We're putting you on a PIP," Damon said. He forced a tight, corporate smile. "Think of it as a roadmap." Gareth's jaw tightened. "It's just, there's something going on at home right now, and Let's keep this focused on the work, Gareth," Damon said gently, the way he might in any status meeting. "We don't need to get into personal reasons. We just need to see the work come back up to where it needs to be." Gareth looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked away at the plant, at the yellowing leaf. Gareth muttered, "Okay," staring a hole through the table. He didn't try to explain himself again. He had tried explaining himself once before at another firm, and he had learned exactly what it bought him. He wasn't going to spend the last of his strength on it twice. Damon took it as acceptance. He put a hand on Gareth's shoulder on the way out and said, "You're going to get through this. I believe in you." Gareth didn't look up. Less than 2 weeks later, Gareth was let go. He had missed 3 more days of work without calling in. By company policy, 3 straight no-call days counted as job abandonment, a separate termination event that didn't have to wait for the PIP to finish. The plan barely had a chance to begin. His work, which had been solid enough at first, had slowly gone flat and careful in the wrong places, little things that quietly piled up. Ellen made the call. Damon was consulted, but only as a formality. He told Ellen he was deeply saddened, but that he understood the decision. He even offered to write Gareth a recommendation letter for his next role. He never wrote it. He told himself he was waiting for Gareth to ask. Gareth never did. That, Damon decided, was permission to let it go. It was a Tuesday morning, late August, when Damon saw Gareth again. He was sitting in Damon's cafe, the one with the barista whose dog Damon always asked about. It took Damon a second to understand that it couldn't be chance. Gareth knew this place. On the table in front of Gareth, beside a cup of coffee that had gone cold a long time ago, sat a slim interoffice envelope with his building badge inside. He looked thinner than Damon remembered. Gareth hadn't shaved in days. He was wearing a faded sweatshirt that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. His eyes had the soft, hollow look of a man who hadn't slept properly in months. Damon almost walked out. But that wasn't what a good man did. A good man walked over. So Damon did. "Gareth?" he said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Hey, how are you?" Gareth looked up. He didn't blink. He just stared at Damon with dead, exhausted eyes. "Damon," he said, the way a man says the name of an old wound. They sat in silence for what felt like a year. Then Gareth nudged the envelope an inch across the table. "My badge," he said. "I kept meaning to send it back. I knew this was your spot, figured this early you'd already be at the office. I just wanted to leave it with the barista." I didn't actually plan on running into you." "Right," Damon said. "Of course." He hated how thin his voice sounded. Gareth nodded slowly. His hand tightened around the cold coffee cup. The knuckles went white for a second, then released. "How have you been?" Damon asked, going for casual. He missed by a mile. Gareth laughed once. It came out short, like he'd forgotten how the rest of it went. "My sister died, Damon." Damon felt his stomach drop. The espresso machine hissed loudly behind the counter. "What?" "Lily, my little sister. She had leukemia." Gareth paused. He had to. He took a breath that didn't quite make it all the way in before he tried again. "She was 19. She died in June. 3 weeks after I got fired." Damon didn't say anything. He couldn't. "I was her caregiver, you know," Gareth continued, eyes on the cold coffee. "Our parents are gone. It was just me and her. I was working days, sitting in the hospital nights. The doctors kept saying she had time, and then they kept saying she didn't. I never knew which version was true on any given morning. I'd come into the office and try to decide whether to specify aluminum or steel for a lobby window, and I'd realize I couldn't remember what aluminum looked like." "Gareth, why didn't you tell anyone?" Gareth's mouth twitched. "I did, once, at my last firm. My manager told me she understood. 2 months later, she let me go. Said I'd been using my situation as an excuse. So no, I learned. You keep your mouth shut and you hope you can outrun it. That's why I was tired. That's why I missed deadlines. That's why I called in that morning before the presentation. She'd had a seizure the night before. I was at the hospital from 2 in the morning until I called you." Gareth rubbed his face hard with the palm of his hand, smearing his eyes. His voice cracked, but he kept talking. He didn't apologize for it. "I needed that job, Damon. The insurance covered most of her treatment. Ellen left the termination voicemail on a Thursday morning. I listened to it while standing at the hospital billing counter, right as the clerk was looking at her screen and telling me my health insurance had just been deactivated. I sold my car that same afternoon. I sold most of what we had. In our last weeks, I couldn't keep the private room she wanted anymore. She died in a shared ward next to an old man with dementia who kept yelling for his wife. Damon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Gareth, when I went to HR, I swear I was only trying to help you. I thought you were..." He heard the words as they left him, heard what they admitted. Gareth went very still. For a moment, he didn't move at all. "So it was you," he said. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded like a man watching something he'd long suspected settle quietly into fact. "Figures it was you." Damon had nothing to say. There was nothing left to say. "I know what you thought." Gareth let out a slow breath that sounded like a scrape. "You thought I was weak, lazy, that I needed some structure." He shook his head, rubbing his eyes with the heel of his hand. "You thought you were doing me a favor. And the whole time, all you had to do was just ask one question. Just, what's going on?" You sat 10 feet from me every day for 3 months. You never asked. You just decided what I was." He stood up and reached for his jacket. He shoved his arms into his jacket, snagging the lining, and pulled it up over his shoulders without a word. "You know what the worst part is, Damon?" Gareth said softly. "You really thought you were helping me. You ruined my life, drove home to your nice apartment, and didn't lose a single minute of sleep over it." Then he walked out. Damon sat in that cafe for 45 minutes after Gareth left. His coffee got cold. A woman with a stroller squeezed past his chair twice. He didn't move it for her. The barista came over once and asked if he was okay. He said yes. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie people like Damon had been telling in one form or another for a very long time. That night, Damon didn't sleep. He kept coming back to one thing Gareth had said. "You just decided what I was." Damon thought about how many times in his life he'd done that to other people, and how it had never once occurred to him that he was doing it. He thought about the junior designer 2 firms ago, the one he'd called not a culture fit. He thought about his second wife, the morning she'd packed her car and he hadn't asked her why, because he'd already decided. He got out of bed at 4 in the morning and stood in the kitchen with all the lights off. He didn't know what he was looking for. He hadn't done that since his father died. 3 weeks later, Damon wrote Gareth a letter. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He knew he hadn't earned the right to ask for that, and he knew that asking would only make Gareth carry one more thing he shouldn't have to. He just wrote what he had learned. He wrote that Gareth had been right. He wrote that he was sorry for Lily and for the room she didn't get, and for every late night Gareth had spent in a hospital chair, while Damon went home to his Bayview apartment and told himself he was a good man. He wrote that he had been quick to judge and slow to ask, and that the price of that had been paid by someone who could not afford it. He didn't expect a reply. He didn't get one. He never saw Gareth again. Damon kept the unsent draft in his drawer. It didn't fix anything, and Gareth was still gone forever. But Damon couldn't bring himself to throw the paper away. At the bottom of the page, below his signature, was a single sentence. He read it on the days he forgot to ask. "You are not as good as you think you are. Ask the question. Ask it today."